Welcome to Arkaro Insights, the show where we try to help B2B execs like you get better results by, bringing you the latest thinking and change and innovation.
For your whole organization.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something I'm pretty sure keeps a lot of you up at night.
Right.
It's that gap between knowing innovation is key, but then actually seeing those efforts pay off. You know what I mean? Like turning that ambition into something real and making a difference.
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? And it's exactly what Mark Blackwell, the founder of Arkaro, dives into in his recent article, The Innovation Strategy Imperative. It's on LinkedIn, came out March 2025.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. Catchy title, and it gets right to the heart of it. I mean, we all love the idea of those quick wins in innovation, right? Something to show for your efforts. But Mark argues that, well, those quick wins.
They can be a bit of a trap.
Yeah, totally. And the article kicks off with this pretty wild stat. A 2024 BCG report found that something like 83% of companies put innovation in their top 3 priorities.
Yeah, that's a huge majority.
It is, right. But here's the kicker, and this is where it gets a little bit crazy. That same report, it shows that innovation readiness has actually gone down. So basically, you all know it's important, but you're actually getting less ready to do it well.
And that's the puzzle for you, isn't it? Like, how do you explain that? Why prioritize something, but then become less equipped to actually pull it off? The article points to a pretty fundamental issue, and this is what Mark calls out specifically, the lack of a proper innovation strategy,
Right.
a real roadmap that connects innovation to, well, the rest of what your business is all about.
Right, and that lack of strategy, that's where this whole quick win trap comes into play. When you're under pressure to show results, to deliver quickly, you might be tempted to just launch a whole bunch of innovation projects, just to show that something's happening.
Yeah, you want to be seen as moving forward, being proactive, and that, to you, looks like a whole bunch of activity.
Exactly. But as the article really drives home, if those projects aren't guided by a clear, thought-out strategy, well, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks.
It's messy, isn't it? And you're not really sure what's going to stick, or if anything will at all. And when those quick wins don't pan out, and let's face it, they often don't, you end up with.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of wasted effort and, let's be honest, a whole lot of frustration, right?
Exactly. And that's where you start seeing the real consequences. Those things that actually hurt your business that you see reflected in your bottom line. You get poor returns on investment because you're essentially throwing money at problems without a real plan.
It's not targeted, is it?
Nope. And then you get those zombie innovation projects. These are the ones that just keep lumbering along, sucking up resources, but they're never really going to deliver anything of value.
Oh, I've seen those for sure.
And even when you do manage to launch new products, sales often fall way short of expectations because, again, there wasn't that strategic thinking behind them. It's like you're hoping to hit a bullseye with a blindfold on.
Yeah.
Not very likely.
Not a great strategy.
Now, if we look at the BCG research again, it really backs all of this up. Over half the people they talked to, 52%, said that an unclear or way too broad innovation strategy was a major blocker for them.
Okay, so over half are struggling with this.
Exactly. But, and this is the part that I find really interesting, even though a lot of companies know this is a problem, very few of them are actually doing anything to fix their actual innovation strategy. Only about 30% said they were planning to really rethink how they approach innovation. Most of them, about 70%, said they were focused on just tweaking their operating model, trying to make their existing processes more efficient.
Okay, so they're focusing on the how, but not the what or the why.
Yeah, exactly. It's like saying, okay, we're going to get really good at driving this car, but we're not going to bother figuring out where we actually want to go. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, and it highlights this fundamental point, right? Like, you can have the most streamlined innovation processes in the world, but if you don't know what you're trying to achieve with them, if you don't have that strategic direction...
You're just going to end up lost, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like Mark says in the article, innovation without strategy is like an orchestra without a conductor. You've got all these talented musicians, but without someone setting the tempo, providing the overall vision...
It's just noise, isn't it?
It's just a cacophony. So let's break this down for everyone listening. What does having a proper innovation strategy actually give you? What are the concrete benefits you can expect to see?
Well, first and foremost, a good strategy sets clear boundaries for you. It helps you define where to focus your innovation efforts. It's about identifying the sweet spot where attractive market opportunities align with your company's actual strengths, the things you're already good at. No point in trying to be everything to everyone.
Right, so you're not spreading yourself too thin, chasing every shiny new thing.
Exactly. And then a good strategy ensures that your resources are actually aligned. You want to make sure that your investment, your time, your money, your people are flowing towards the opportunities that really matter, the ones that fit your overall business goals.
So it's about being strategic with where you put your energy and your money.
Exactly. And then a solid strategy provides a framework for decision making. It gives you the criteria to evaluate different innovation projects, to prioritize, what to go after and what to maybe put on hold. This can be a game changer for you because it takes the guesswork out of the equation. It's not about gut feeling anymore.
So you're taking out some of the risk.
Yeah. And the emotional roller coaster that can come
Yeah.
with making those tough calls. And finally, and I think this is often overlooked, a good innovation strategy gives your teams a sense of purpose. It helps them understand the why behind their work. They can see how their efforts are contributing to the bigger picture. And that, well, that can be incredibly motivating.
Yeah, because people want to feel like they're part of something bigger, that their work actually matters.
Exactly. And the BCG report, the one we mentioned earlier, it actually highlights 6 specific practices that they see again and again in companies that are really good at connecting their overall business strategy with their innovation strategy. These are like the hallmarks of a really effective approach, and they seem to be strongly linked to real-world success too.
Okay, so these are the things that we should all be striving for.
Definitely. The first one is senior executive ownership. Innovation can't just be something that's delegated down the chain. It needs to be a priority at the very top of the organization. Leaders need to be actively involved, championing innovation, setting the tone, and providing resources. Without that, it just doesn't work.
Right, because it shows that it's actually important to the organization, that it's not just a side project.
Exactly. And the second practice is having absolute clarity on how innovation actually supports the company's overall strategic goals. Everyone in the organization needs to understand how their innovation efforts, even the small ones, are contributing to the bigger picture. It's about connecting the dots for everybody.
It gives that sense of direction we were talking about.
Yeah, totally. And then the third practice, this is really important for you, is focusing on your competitive advantages. This is where you need to be really honest with yourself and ask, what are we genuinely good at? Where do we have a real edge? It's about playing to your strengths, not trying to be something you're not.
So doubling down on what you're already good at.
Exactly. And then the fourth practice is having those clearly defined innovation domains. This is about, setting those boundaries we talked about earlier, deciding where you're going to focus your energy and not trying to do too much at once. Focus is key.
Right, because you can't be all things to all people.
Exactly. And then fifth, and this is where a lot of companies trip up, it's about having a balanced portfolio structure. You need to think about different time horizons, balancing those short-term wins with longer-term strategic investments. Don't sacrifice the future for the sake of a quick win today. It's about playing the long game.
It's about sustainability, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the sixth practice is having those quantified objectives, setting clear targets that are linked to your financial goals, and then using KPIs, those key performance indicators, to actually track your progress along the way. This makes innovation measurable, accountable, and less of a guessing game.
So it's not just about feeling good about doing innovative things, it's about making sure those efforts are actually delivering tangible results.
Absolutely. And the article points out, and I think this is really powerful for you, companies that have adopted at least 4 of these best practices, they actually see significantly higher sales from their new products. That's a pretty clear link between having a good strategy in place and getting real business results.
So the data backs it up.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Now, let's flip this around for a second and look at what happens when you don't have that strong link between strategy and innovation. What are the risks, the vulnerabilities that you're exposing yourself to?
Because I imagine there are quite a few.
Oh, yeah, there definitely are. I mean, first off, if you don't have strong leadership ownership, innovation tends to become isolated.
Yeah.
It's seen as something separate from the core business, and that's a recipe for disaster. Without clear communication on innovation's role, your teams are kind of left wandering in the dark. They're not sure what they're working towards or how their efforts connect to the bigger picture.
So you end up with a lot of activity, but not necessarily the right kind of activity.
Exactly. And if you're not focused on your competitive advantages, you can easily waste resources on projects that, well, frankly, you're not well suited for. It's like trying to compete in a race you're not trained for.
You're setting yourself up for failure, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah. And then without those clear innovation domains, Your efforts become fragmented. You're spreading yourself too thin, trying to do too many things at once, and that dilutes your impact. And without a good portfolio structure, as we talked about, you risk overinvesting in the short term and neglecting those crucial long-term bets that are vital for your future growth.
It's like being so focused on putting out today's fire that you forget to build a fire extinguisher for tomorrow.
Exactly. You're constantly reacting instead of being proactive. And then finally, if you don't have those clear objectives and KPIs in place, it becomes really hard to measure success or even to know when to kill a project that's just not working. This is how you end up with those zombie projects we talked about. They just keep dragging on, consuming resources, but they're never going to deliver anything.
They're the walking dead of the innovation world.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Mark even mentioned those infamous CEO pet projects, the ones that are started on a whim and have zero strategic justification. I'm sure many of you have encountered those at some point in your careers.
Oh, I'm sure everyone listening has a story or two about those. So it's not just that a lack of strategy makes it harder to innovate. It can actually actively lead to bad innovation.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. So how do you actually fix this? How do you bridge that innovation gap? Well, Mark then goes on to talk about Arkaro's approach, their do-it-with-you philosophy. This isn't about just giving you a report and walking away. It's about working alongside you to actually build those innovation capabilities within your organization, making it part of your DNA.
It's about empowering you to innovate effectively.
Exactly. And they break it down into 5 key steps. First, you got to start with a clear business strategy. This is non-negotiable. All your innovation efforts should flow directly from and support your overall business goals. If your strategy isn't clear, everything else falls apart.
It's the foundation, right?
Exactly. And then second, you need to define your innovation domains. This is about figuring out where you're going to focus your energy. And Arkaro works with you to do that. They help you assess market attractiveness, things like market size, growth potential, competition, and then they look at your own capabilities. Where do you have a real right to win? It's about finding that sweet spot where market opportunity meets your strengths.
So it's a tailored approach. It's not one size fits all.
Nope, definitely not. And then third, you need to secure senior leadership ownership. We talked about this before, but it's so crucial. You need your leaders to be actively involved, championing innovation, providing resources, and creating a culture that encourages smart risk-taking.
So it's not just about saying the right words. It's about taking action.
Exactly. And then fourth, you need to build your innovation capabilities. And here's where it gets interesting. Mark talks about 2 different types of capabilities that you need to develop, both of which are equally important. The first is like the technical stuff, training your teams in things like design thinking, customer discovery, concept development, portfolio management. Those are the practical tools of the trade.
So that's the nuts and bolts of innovation.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second type of capability is more about culture and collaboration, things like fostering teamwork, building psychological safety so people feel comfortable sharing ideas, encouraging productive conflict, breaking down silos, because innovation rarely happens in isolation.
It's about creating the right environment, the right mindset.
Exactly. And then the fifth and final step is establishing innovation governance. This is about putting the systems and processes in place to keep everything on track. You need clear decision-making processes, mechanisms for allocating resources, and accountability structures to make sure that all your innovation activities are aligned with your strategy.
So it's about providing the structure and the guardrails to make sure that innovation actually happens in a way that's beneficial to the organization.
Exactly. It's about preventing those zombie projects, making sure resources are used wisely, and ensuring that innovation actually delivers value. It's a holistic approach, It's not just about doing a few random things and hoping for the best. It's about having a clear vision, the right capabilities, and the systems to support it all.
So the takeaway here, and I think this is something that every B2B executive needs to hear, is that the allure of the quick win, it can be really tempting, but it can also be really misleading. Without that solid strategic foundation, those quick wins often turn into quick losses, and you end up wasting valuable time, money, and energy. Mark's article really drives home the point that true innovation success, the kind that delivers sustainable results, it starts with strategy. It's about aligning your innovation efforts with your business goals, understanding your market, knowing your strengths, getting your leadership on board, and building those critical capabilities.
It's about creating an environment where innovation can actually thrive, where it's not just a buzzword, but a real driver of growth and value.
Exactly. And if you're feeling like you're stuck in that quick win trap, if you're struggling to see real results from your innovation efforts, then Arkaro might be able to help. You can learn more about their services in strategy and innovation process, product management, commercial excellence, and integrated business management by visiting their website, arkaro.com.
And if you want to have a more in-depth conversation about your specific needs and how Arcaro's approach might be able to help you, you can reach out to Mark directly. His email is mark@arkaro.com, and he's always happy to have a chat.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive on Arkaro Insights. We hope you found it useful, and if you did, please share it with your colleagues. Spread the word, and let's all work together to make innovation a real force for positive change in the B2B world.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for being here.
Anytime.
Cheers.